Samsung recently released the Galaxy Watch 3 to a moderate amount of fanfare. Many of you will remember about 2 years ago they released the original Galaxy Watch, which was the flagship at the time. Now, the Galaxy Watch released in 2018 wasn't Samsung's first foray into the watch market, but it was supposed to be their premium smartwatch with a more watch-like experience. I purchased that watch with the intention of using it as my long-term everyday watch. After using this watch pretty much daily for the last 2 years, I feel like I can give a pretty good assessment of how it's held up over that time period. Now, the version of the watch that I have is the 46mm cellular and Bluetooth version. This allows me to place or receive phone calls directly from the watch and use any apps or services that require data independent of my cell phone. So I guess a good place to start with talking about how well the watch is held up is to talk about how well it's functioned. And it's functioned pretty well. I haven't had a lot of problems, and I haven't had to deal with some of the horror stories that I've read and heard from other Galaxy Watch owners. Now, when we talk about functionality, I like to talk about how the watch flows with daily use, and it works really good as what it's supposed to be. It comes preloaded with some pretty good standard watch faces, but there are an absolute ton of watch faces that you can download from the Galaxy Store to make this watch look great. Now, when we talk about the Galaxy Store, which is where you'll get your watch faces again and apps, some of the apps aren't really that useful, not to me. So I really won't get into usefulness of apps in the Galaxy Store for this watch, because what I find useful, someone else may not find useful. It can be very subjective. But what I will say is that the apps that I find useful on the watch, calculator, camera controller, exercise tracking, they all have worked great. I haven't had very many problems. Now, one thing that I do appreciate is that Samsung has done a pretty good job of keeping the wearable app and the watch firmware up to date. 2 years in and it feels just as snappy as it did fresh out of the box. And this is actually really good, seeing as the firmware on the watch is Tizen based, which is Samsung's proprietary OS, versus on the Galaxy Note, for example, which is the phone that I use with it, is Android based. The Galaxy Watch and my Samsung Note 10 work really well together, and I rarely have a problem that a quick restart won't fix. After 2 years of use, and again, this is daily use, battery consumption is still really good on this watch. I still average 3 to 3.5 days of battery usage between charges, and that's from a full charge to completely dead. Now, one caveat to this is the battery consumption is much better when the watch is near the phone. When I leave my phone at home and just use the watch's LTE cellular connection when I'm out and about, the battery tends to drain much more quickly. And that's expected because the cellular connection is working a lot harder when the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connections are not available. Now, call quality is as good as can be expected with such a small speaker. But what I will say is when I connect the Bluetooth earbuds to the watch, I cannot tell a difference between a phone call on the watch and any other device. In fact, I've had a 40+ minute phone call before directly on the watch with my Bluetooth earbuds in, and I didn't even realize I didn't have my phone with me until I got an alert on the watch that the temperature was getting too high. So all in all, functionality of this watch over the last 2 years has been really stable. Samsung has kept the firmware updated, and the user interface still looks pretty good. Now on to durability. I'm going to give the durability of this watch a solid 8 out of 10. Samsung used a mix of materials on this watch. There's stainless steel, plastic, Gorilla Glass, and rubber. So the stainless steel body does scratch, but it probably looks worse in the pictures and video than it actually is. From a distance, you actually can't see those scratches, and the watch still looks pretty good. Now, the bezel, on the other hand, is like a black graphite finish, and it does scratch easily. I've knocked and dinged it against things, and those scratches do show up, but fortunately, the bezel's made out of a durable material, and it hasn't cracked, and it still functions perfectly. The Gorilla Glass that Samsung used on the face of the watch seems to be pretty durable, but to be honest with you, I've kept the screen protector on. All I do is keep it clean. It's held up really well. It doesn't collect a lot of scratches, and I can see the watch face clearly. The plastic on the back of the watch also seems to be pretty high quality. It hasn't scratched or faded. The thing that's worn out the most on this watch over the last 2 years is the band. Now, I wasn't a big fan of the band initially, but I just didn't see a need to change it, and it looks like on the new Galaxy Watch 3, Samsung has decided to go with a leather band. But either way, that's not that big of an issue because there are a ton of aftermarket and third-party bands for this watch on the market. So my overall opinion after 2 years of ownership is that this is a really good purchase. Even today, and seeing that it's about $80 less than it was when it originally launched, I think it's definitely a good value. Now, will I switch to the Galaxy Watch 3? I doubt it. Well, maybe I will to review it, but as far as using it as a daily watch, I don't think I will. And the main reason why is because the Galaxy Watch that I currently have, the original, is working just fine. In fact, it's working so well that I'll probably use it until it dies. Now, would I recommend buying this watch today? Well, that's a tough one. On one hand, it's a great watch that I think is built to last, but on the other hand, Samsung and their updates can be kind of sketchy. Now, in recent years, Samsung's been pretty good about pushing out firmware updates to devices. But if you do buy this watch, realize that it's already in the second year of its life cycle, and Samsung may be slow or reluctant to push out any future firmware updates. So yeah, that's my review of the Galaxy Watch after 2 years. Do you guys own the Galaxy Watch? If so, what do you think about it? And if you own it, do you plan on upgrading to the Galaxy Watch 3? I'd love to know your thoughts. So drop a comment below telling me your experience with the Galaxy Watch and if you plan on upgrading. And if you like the content, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.